Hello and welcome to the Summer Solstice Palming Party. This is Nathan Oxenfeld. I want to apologize in advance for any background noise, but I am in a coffee shop. I was visiting my family for Father's Day, and I wanted to make sure I still hopped on here on the actual summer solstice. So today is June 21st, 2023, and today our palming party is going to be about 15 minutes of relaxation, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A in the chat. So part of me doing this from the coffee shop is meant to actually show that you can palm anywhere, anytime, even if there's people around. And it might look kind of strange, but I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that sometimes it's okay to just not care what other people think, and to really show you that you can integrate this really anywhere, anytime. But I'm also going to show you how to kind of take breaks during the palming, and we're also going to be able to have a short discussion afterwards as well. So hopefully the sound is coming through okay. I will be looking at the chat and looking for questions and feedback as well. So once again, not in my office with my dependable Wi-Fi, but we'll see how the connection goes as we get going into it. So I am sitting at this table here, so I do have a place to rest my elbows because we're going to be palming, and it's better if you're not just supported up like that. Your shoulders might get tired, so we do want to have some support. So make sure you have either a desk or maybe even some pillows, or maybe you feel like actually lying down and just having your arms up like this. Ultimately, it's whatever's comfortable. And if you need to take a break from palming before I prompt it, feel free to do so, because I don't want you to feel cramped or sore at all. So without further ado, let's get right into palming and visualizing and activating our imagination. So sometimes I like to actually rub the hands together to create some heat and some friction. And already seeing some comments coming in. Glad you all could be here today. Part of the palming party is that we get to do it together as a group, and you can know that there are other people all around the world participating at the same time as you. So once your hands are nice and warm, you're going to cover your eyes and block the light. Now, I'm not putting any pressure on my eyes. I'm not actually even touching my eyes. My eyes are closed. My hands are just blocking out the light. And I'm actually moving my seat back a little bit because the table is a little short. So if I were originally in that same position, I would have to sort of slouch forward. So by scooting my chair back, I'm actually extending my spine so that there's more length between the tailbone and the top of the neck, the skull. And I'm relaxing my shoulders down. Because sometimes when we support our elbows on the surface, we will sort of shrug our shoulders up. So make sure your shoulders are relaxing down the back and just settle into the lack of light. Because what we're going to do today is actually imagine the light. Since today is the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, it's the longest day of the year, the day with the most amount of sunlight, obviously depending on the weather. But guess what? Even if it's cloudy today or raining today, or maybe you're in a time zone where the sun has already set, or maybe you're in the southern hemisphere where it's the shortest day of the year, it doesn't really matter, because we are going to imagine the sun with the eyes closed. And essentially, we're going to be imagining ourselves doing some sunning, which is a Bates method practice. We're also going to be imagining ourselves doing some swinging. And I want to show you how the sunning and the swinging can be combined. So we're palming our eyes, so there's no physical light entering the eyes. So instead, we're going to imagine and connect with the imaginary light. So I want you to picture yourself standing outside in the bright sunlight. Where are you? Maybe you're in a grassy field. Maybe you're out on the beach. Maybe you're on top of a mountain. Maybe you're out on a boat on the water. Or maybe you're just in your yard or on your porch. Doesn't really matter. But I want you to think about that sun in the sky and the blue sky all around it. Maybe there's some white puffy clouds, but it's direct sunlight. And I want you to imagine that light landing on your closed eyes. And you're going to turn your head side to side, either physically, so you're actually turning your head right now as you palm, so you're swinging your head, or simply with your imagination. So if you just want to stay still physically, you're just imagining turning your head side to side. I'm personally physically turning my head because that helps me imagine the oppositional movement, which is bringing us into the swing. In other words, you're swinging the sun or you're swinging the light. So as your head turns to the left, the light moves to the right. And as you turn your head to the right, the light moves to the left. Now, if you're not moving your head, you're just imagining moving your head and seeing if you can imagine or visualize that optical effect of oppositional movement. Not only the light or the sun, but all the objects around you moving in the opposite direction. Very nice. So even though you're palming your eyes, you're actually imagining that you're swinging and sunning. So it's kind of like we're doing 3 things at once. It's this relaxation trifecta: swinging, sunning, and palming. And they don't even have to be separate. They can all happen simultaneously with the imagination. So let's take our first break. And when I say break, I want you to keep your eyes closed, but you can remove one hand from one eye in order to stretch that hand and arm. So I like to open and close the fist, kind of loosen up the joints in my fingers. And then I like to roll my wrist and maybe even do some shoulder rolls before switching to the other side. So I've palmed my opposite eye. I've removed the opposite hand, opening and closing the other fist to loosen up the fingers and the wrist with some wrist rolls, some shoulder rolls, and then we're going right back into palming. So now both my eyes are covered again, and it's back into the dark. And we're just going to simply repeat what we did, imagining the light, imagining the colors, imagining the movement. And all of this is designed to initiate a feeling of relaxation, feeling of calm, feeling of peace. No matter where you are, no matter what time it is, no matter whether you're in a private place or in a public place, despite the world around us, the chaos happening, we still can tap into this inner feeling of relaxation and mental focus. And I invite you to let go of any visualization now, any imagination or any kind of mental pictures and simply check in with the darkness, because all of life is a balance. And so it's not just about the light. In order to have the light, we must also have the dark. So when we palm our eyes, certainly for the longer sessions, like 5 or 10 or 15 minutes or longer, we can actually sink into a pretty deep, dark place of black, the color black. So we started off by imagining the blue sky and the white clouds and the bright sunlight. And now we're just tuning into the void. No light, no shape, no form. And seeing if that can also create a sense of peace and calm and relaxation. Everybody's different. Some people respond better to the mental pictures and the shapes and the colors and the light. Other people respond better to the lack of all of that and the color black. I personally like both, which is why I'm inviting you to try both and see which one you prefer, which one your eyes prefer, which one your mind prefers, because this is all very customizable. And after enjoying that deep, dark, black, lack of any light, we are going to actually begin to transition out of palming and back into the physical light. So after resting the eyes with them covered, you're going to keep them closed and just slowly remove the palms, which is going to allow the light to land on your closed eyelids. So there's no direct light coming in yet. It's indirect light. So you're starting to receive some light and some color, but no form or shape yet. That will happen once you feel ready to blink your eyes open. And then you're starting to receive direct light and shapes and forms and objects after not seeing anything for about 10 minutes. And I think I brought this up in the last palming party, which was just a few weeks ago for the full moon, that sometimes when we temporarily blind ourselves by palming, which is when we have no eyesight, and then we have an opportunity to come back out, it's a moment for gratitude. Even if there is some blur in your eyesight, you can still express gratitude for the shapes and forms and colors that you can perceive. And when you approach your vision from that place, usually it sharpens things up and things look better and clearer and more colorful. So I love hearing people's feedback in the chat or in the comments to see if you have any kind of experience of either the visualization part from the mental pictures or noticing any changes in your physical eyesight as well. So seems like the connection is holding. Looks like I'm still live, so I was a little worried that sometime during the palming it would have cut out, but I'm seeing still got some people typing into the chat here. So thank you for typing in some questions. I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the chat and see if there's any clarification needed or any experiences that you'd like to share with those people here. So before I do that, though, I just want to let you know that what I just did of palming in a public place with strangers around is something I probably would not have done at the beginning of my vision practice. Because I think part of my vision problem, my nearsightedness, was not just about difficulty seeing, me seeing the world out there, but it was also tied in with certain stresses of how the world saw me. So I probably would have been too shy or nervous or self-conscious to sit in that position for 10 minutes in a cafe. But part of me healing my vision had to do with letting go of some of those limitations and fears and anxieties and worries about what other people thought of me. And it feels better to just do what I want and what I need, because guess what? My eyes feel better now compared to before. And if I would have just felt like, oh, I can't do it in public, I can only do it in private, that really limits the amount of time we can actually do the practice. So anyway, just wanted to throw that in there. And Anne-Marie was just commenting, it's great to see, love the coffee shop scene. Yeah, it's a nice coffee shop here in Pennsylvania called Nowhere Coffee. A little shout out to the location. And Sunny saying, so glad I can participate this time around. Sending you a big hug. Oh, thank you. And just so everybody knows, I do these on a quarterly basis usually on the solstices and equinoxes. So at the moment, the next one will be on the fall equinox in about 3 months. Also, all the replays are available on YouTube, so you can always go back and check out the recordings of previous ones. So jumping into the question and answer section, Sunny was asking, no matter how I try to place my hands, there's still some light that comes through tiny openings. Will palming still help? Absolutely. It's not crucial to get total darkness, because one thing that I like to say is that when you go into palming, you're actually kind of switching from eyesight to insight. So you're talking about eyesight. You're telling me that your eyes are perceiving some physical light coming in and hitting your retinas, and you can physically see that. But that's your eyesight. That's not your insight. What I had you imagine was standing outside in a field or on a boat, or those suggestions. That has nothing to do with what your eyes are physically seeing. That has to do with what your mind is thinking about. So whether you get a perfect seal and there's no light coming in, or there's still some light leaking through, doesn't matter, because that's your eyesight. And when you palm, you're temporarily kind of turning that off or shifting your mental focus more to the inner vision, your insight, your memory, your imagination. So in my opinion, palming, the true purpose of palming is actually to activate the insight. Putting the hands over the eyes typically makes it easier for people to activate that or to get in touch with that. But eventually, I even want you to get to the point where you can activate it without your palms. So that even just if you close your eyes right now, think about some memory or imagination or visualization. And there's a lot of light coming through your eyelids, but it doesn't matter, because you can still focus on what your mind is thinking about. That's a really big part of what this whole Bates method, natural vision improvement thing is all about. So really good question. And once again, pretty much if we're sitting there kind of stressing or straining about, what's happening with the eyesight, then we're still not really allowing that insight relaxation piece to occur. So really just, get nice and comfortable, so that you can support yourself in that way, and then really just go into the visualization, or just try it without the palms and see if that helps too. Let's see. Hey, Gwen, glad you could be here today. Let's see. Nitil said, my eyes feel a lot more relaxed after palming. That's definitely the goal. The other thing that I was feeling was heat. Even though it was only about 10 minutes of palming, my hands were getting quite warm. And that's another benefit of, I just mentioned, hey, I want you to even try it without the palms. But one extra benefit of doing it with the palms is not only the extra darkness, but the extra warmth and heat, which also can relax the strain, the eye strain, and the tight eye muscles. Hey, Christine. These are fun and so relaxing. Thanks for offering them. Yes, that's another key. It's not just the relaxation, it's the fun. We have to make the Bates Method stuff fun. Otherwise, it's not really probably going to work fully. So, any way we can do that, I love. Oh, cool. Fiona's saying, I really responded to the sun palming. It lifted my spirits and made me smile. Thank you. I love the black too. There you go. A little bit of both like that. But how cool is that, Fiona, that even just thinking about sunning or even just the sun in general can have this uplifting effect? I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's one of the qualities of light. I mean, when we say light, we're talking about, light, but think about also the opposite of heavy, right? Heavy, density kind of pulls you down, whereas light lifts you up, and it can have this kind of cleansing, rejuvenating kind of effect. So it's pretty powerful to tap into what you can achieve, not only when you actually embrace the light and do the sunning, but even just thinking about the sunning can initiate a very similar response. Julia said, yes, I also have that. It is more like people seeing me and fears attached. Oh, yeah. When I was talking about, what are people going to think if I'm palming in a public place? Because, I mean, honestly, like it does kind of look kind of like you're sad or like, oh no, woe is me, or like crying in public or something like that. So what we're doing with palming is we're kind of reclaiming it as like, no, this is a normal thing that humans are supposed to do every day in order to make their eyes relax and feel better. It's like brushing your teeth, right? I mean, um, we don't necessarily brush our teeth in public, so it is totally fine to palm in private as well if that's your preference. But I guess part of what I'm suggesting is it might be kind of a cool little challenge to try some of these things in public and just see how you feel about it. And honestly, it's actually kind of a cool conversation starter. um, and what I like to think about, because when I was self-conscious about palming and sunning and doing these things in public, at first I was afraid of what people would think of me. But then I started thinking, they're just jealous that, first of all, they might not even know how to relax their eyes. Secondly, they're not as comfortable with themselves that they would be, free to express themselves and be themselves in public instead of feeling like they have to be somebody else or conform to some societal kind of thing. So, part of what we're doing is we're kind of breaking out of that shell, and we're just embracing our own relaxation and intuition. Let's see. Harbinger BK said, love the holistic perspective you bring to natural vision. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. John Sarno and mind-body syndrome? Yeah, so Dr. John Sarno, I believe, wrote that book about healing back pain, and also the fact that it's not just rooted in the physical, but there's also mental, emotional, and psychological, even spiritual roots to physical symptoms like chronic back pain and things like that. And it makes a lot of sense to me. And I also think that Dr. Bates was essentially taking an approach like that when it comes to the eyes, healing eye pain, healing eye strain, and understanding that those vision problems are rooted in psychological, emotional, mental, spiritual roots. So the physical symptom, it can be valuable to trace it back to its roots. And yeah, I've actually been thinking about that a lot because I've been dealing with some sort of upper back, shoulder pain. And so instead of just thinking about, what can I do physically to like stretch it and massage it and stuff like that, I'm also thinking about, where else could this be coming from, right? Like sometimes we even hear that phrase like, backstabbing, or if somebody sort of betrays you, it's like I've been, stabbed in the back. And it's like, that's a mental, emotional thing, but it actually can show up in the physical back. So yeah, I love that work. And if anybody hasn't looked into it, I would suggest maybe checking out that book by Dr. John Sarno. All right, Sonny said, my experience. It was very easy imagining the sunning and swinging because I remember what it's like when I do the practice on my deck outside. It seemed very real. Perfect. Yeah, Dr. Bates said it's easier to remember things that you've already seen before, and it's easier to imagine things that you've seen before. So I'm glad that, by picking something that you've already had a physical experience with in a tangible place that you're familiar with, that makes it easier versus sometimes it's like, oh, if you imagine, you're out in the jungle or you're, out at the beach or something, and it's not really based in your own experience, it may not work as well. So I invite everybody to take Sonny's advice there and really customize this and really set the scene so that it's as easy as possible, as effortless as possible. Susie said, I love the discussion on the emotional factors of vision. How we think affects how we see. I love that. I'm just going to repeat that. How we think affects how we see. I mean, that could be, that little phrase there could actually be the whole takeaway of the whole palming party today, because that's essentially the thesis of the Bates method, is your mental state affects your physical sight. So spot on there, Susie. Corenda said, hi Nathan, what kind of eye drops would you recommend to use against dry eyes in addition to yawning, which can be inconvenient to force all day while working the screens? First of all, glad that you're aware of the positive effect of yawning on dry eyes, because yawning is definitely the number one natural remedy to keep that lubrication going. So that would be the preference. But if eye drops, if you are in a place where you do need some additional external help, generally, I recommend, homeopathic eye drops, or at least eye drops that don't have preservatives in them. Usually the homeopathic ones don't. Also, like my colleague, Dr. Sam Verne, talks a lot about MSM drops, and people like Dr. Ray Gottlieb have talked about using like castor oil to help with dry eyes. Generally, that's less of like a during the day screen time thing, and that's more of like a right before bed treatment, where you would apply it around the eyes, or there are some castor oil drops that go into the eyes that you would do before you go to sleep. And then oftentimes you wake up with lubricated eyes, and over time it can sort of help deal with some dry eye syndrome kind of stuff. Let's see. Hey, Art, glad you could be here today. Yep. Thanks for mentioning the emotional piece of how the world sees you. Yeah, I mean, we think about eyesight a lot about us looking out, but I do think that our perception of how other people view us can also shape our self-image and our worldview. And that's, our worldview, think about that word, worldview, how you view the world, how you see things, how you see the world. So definitely just unwinding that and finding those connections. Hey, Beata said, hi, Nathan. I could follow you perfectly. Thank you. I always feel my vision clearer right after, but then going back to not so great. How often can I do the palming throughout the day? So that's the idea, is that we do a practice, we get the improvement, and it might be temporary at first, and then some of the eye strain comes back, right? So when you palm your eyes, you're reducing the eye strain. And when you open the eyes, maybe some of the old bad vision habits come back, and there's some effort to try and see or try and focus, and then the eye strain is back until you either palm again and reduce it, or find another way to reduce it, swinging, sunning, any of these Bates method things. But ultimately, we are kind of practicing this so that we learn how to reduce the eye strain, and then when we open up, we don't go back to bad vision habits. We are maintaining our good vision habits, which keeps the eye strain down and can keep the benefits and make it more permanent, as opposed to this thing that we have to keep dropping, multiple times a day. But sometimes we do have to practice it multiple times a day for those habits to stick. So one of my favorite proteges of Dr. Bates, Margaret Corbett, used to talk about palming at the top of every hour. And so, like, we did that today at 12 o'clock, right? 12 o'clock, we started palming, and it's now 12:30. So in 30 minutes, after our palming party's over, just because the palming party's over, maybe this will be a fun challenge today on the summer solstice to really commit to palming today and say, hey, at 1 o'clock, I'm going to palm again. At 2 o'clock, I'm going to palm again. At 3 o'clock, I'm going to palm again. 4 o'clock, palm. 5 o'clock, palm. You really can't overdo it, especially if you're doing it in short sessions, like we did about 10 minutes at 12 o'clock. So maybe at 1 o'clock, you do 1 minute. 2 o'clock, you do 2 minutes. 3 o'clock, you do 3 minutes. See what I'm going for here? So that, maybe by the time it's time to go to bed, 8 or 9 or 10, whatever time you go to bed, you do the number of minutes for whatever hour it is. So you're kind of accumulating it throughout the day. And let's say you're busy between 3 and 6. Okay, well, I missed 3 o'clock. I missed 4 o'clock. I missed 5 o'clock. So now I'm going to do a little bit of a longer palming session at 7, right? So you want to just kind of balance it out. And really, even if it's not for multiple minutes, even if it's just for a few seconds, that still counts. So if everybody just palms again for 10 seconds, and then slowly coming back out and opening back up, that counts. It doesn't have to be this big chunk of time, but it is the kind of thing where usually the longer you do it, the more benefit you get. Anne Marie said, thanks for mentioning about shyness and about how we can perceive that the world sees us. I can understand how vision is affected by our emotions and perceptions. Yeah. Glad that resonates with you as well. Susie asked, are you doing any vision retreats, and do you need a space to hold it? Yeah, I'd love to do some more vision retreats. That was like kind of the main thing I was gearing up for doing more of before the pandemic. So yeah, now I'm starting to look more into that. And yeah, I'm always open to people who have suggestions of retreat centers, conference centers, places that, to host me for that kind of thing. Because I love doing the multiple day, overnight stay kind of things, because then you can spend 24, 48, 72 hours without glasses. And this is like, you do it all day, all night. It's just, it can really help sort of push you forward. So yeah, maybe reach out and let me know what you're thinking. Let's see. Marshall Tig 3R said, is sleeping with a sleep mask, is that the same as palming? It's similar, but it's not the same. It's called palming for a reason. It's not called sleep masking or blindfolding. Those are good ways to block the light. And it does give you an opportunity to, once again, activate the insight and imagine things and visualize things. Or if you're sleeping, dream. But there is just something missing when you don't have that skin-to-skin contact. One of those that I mentioned earlier is the warmth, the heat. So I would still do palming. A few more questions here before we wrap things up. Oh, yeah. Liz asked a similar question. Is there a preference towards hand palming versus using one of the mindfold blindfolds? Yeah, so I just kind of addressed that. They're both good, but I would still do both. I think Cheryl appreciated the explanation of eyesight versus insight. And in my opinion, a big part of, perfect vision involves learning how to have them both at the same time. Right? We're talking about switching from one or the other. Am I in eyesight mode or insight mode? And I think perfect vision is like, I've got both my eyesight and my insight activated, and they're actually in alignment and they're working together. Oh, hey, Mom. Dad's visualization was you body surfing at the beach. Enjoyed your session. Yeah, like I said, I was just down visiting my family at the beach, and we were swimming in the ocean. So glad we could provide recent visualization. I already miss you guys. Cheryl said, is palming as helpful for dry eyes as using warm compresses? Yeah, I would say, if not even better, because there's a self-healing aspect, right? When you have a warm compress, that's not you. That's not a part of your body. When your hand is connected to your eye, right? It's all part of the same body, right? So when you have that self-healing intention, it I don't know, I feel like it kind of ekes above a little bit of using external devices or tools. That being said, you can still infuse a lot of self-healing intention into your warm compresses and cool compresses as well. All right, we got a little callback here. Johnny Utah is saying, in your first palming party, number 1 from spring 2020. Yeah, that's right. I think I started doing these right at the beginning of the pandemic. I was using 2 firm cushions when palming. Are those memory foam, or what specifically are they? Where did you get them? I can't find the right cushions for elbow comfort. So those were actually given to me by a retired Bates Method teacher named Martha Rigney. She was based in Raleigh, North Carolina. And when she was retiring, she reached out to me to come pick up some of her vision tools and vision books and things that she wasn't really going to be using anymore. And that was part of the package. And they're called palming pillows or palming cushions. They were homemade, actually. And it was pretty much like, firm foam that was covered in like pillowcases, essentially. So it's kind of a homemade sort of thing. They weren't memory foam. So I didn't personally make them, but I imagine that you could maybe find that kind of foam at like a hardware store or home improvement store. Because they are soft, but they stay kind of firm when you pile them on top of each other, and they're different heights because everybody's got a different requirement. So you can stack a few on top, and it's like pretty comfortable. I don't actually really use them that much anymore, but yeah, you can certainly kind of look around and get kind of creative. Hey, Tori, glad you could be here today. Palming makes my day, and I can see so much better afterwards. Oh, that's so awesome. Thanks for being here, Tori. Hearts of Goldenrod said, I ended up palming an extra 10 minutes. Nice. Like how you did in your earlier ones. 10 minutes wasn't enough for me. This felt very relaxing. I've done palming in public as well. Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, technically you don't have to stop palming. You could still be palming if you want. Julia said, Johnny, I asked a place that sells beds. Oh, there you go, for the palming pillows, to cut a piece of memory foam in the right shape. Made the cover myself. Maybe that's an option. There you go, getting creative. Arts and crafts day. See, this is why I love the palming parties, because we can just help each other out and connect and build this community. Hearts of Goldenrod also asked, what's recommended for a lazy eye? First recommendation, stop calling it a lazy eye, because that's reaffirming that it's lazy. It's not actually lazy. It's actually more strained than the other eye. The reason that it maybe isn't working as a team with the other eyes because it has more eye strain. So if you call it a lazy eye, you usually automatically think like, oh, it needs to start working harder and trying harder, as opposed to, oh, this is a actually more strained eye, therefore it needs more relaxation. So why don't you palm that eye more? You can do one-eyed palming, right? And definitely look into Dr. Bates's approach to strabismus and amblyopia and squint. He has 2 chapters in his book, Perfect Sight Without Glasses. One's called The Cause of Squint, and the next one's called The Cure of Squint. And it's a pretty good starting point for looking into how to play with that. And there's also a few episodes of the Better Eyesight Podcast where there's actually a whole episode devoted to squint and strabismus and learning how to get the fusion working with the 2 eyes together. So that word fusion is also a good direction to go to research. Anything that helps with fusion is really powerful for strabismus. Patricia's asking, how do you spell the name of Dr. John Sarno? I believe it's Sarno. And if you scroll up in the chat, in the live chat, you can find it there. And I think the name is called Healing Back Pain, if my memory serves me. Sunny asked, are there any new insights or helpful information about floaters and how to address them since I last spoke to you about 3 years ago? Yeah, the main thing I've been doing lately is supplementing with bromelain. Type that in the chat. It's a digestive enzyme found in pineapples and papayas. And yeah, sometimes it can have a positive effect on breaking down those floaters. Also, the swinging practice from the Bates method, anything to get your lymph flow going, because your eyes are nourished by your lymph system, which is like the cleanup crew of the body. So I think about swinging and getting the movement of the eyes to not only sort of jostle the fluids of the eyes, but to actually stimulate that lymph flow to purify the eyes as well. Oh, nice. Sunny chimed in. John Sarno's got the Healing Back Pain book and also Use Your Mind to Heal Your Body. I haven't read that one, but that sounds pretty up my alley. Kata Yoon said, hi, Nathan. I'm loving the palming parties. The room looks new after. Nice. Human design, which I've been exploring in the past few years, talks about viewpoint and how we are each designed to see. It's unique. Oh, nice. Yeah. I've heard about that as well. I've looked a little bit into it and talked to some people about that, but that might be worth looking more into. Oh, hey, Paige, saying hello. Thank you for sending your healing energy to Taiwan. This is my first palming party. Glad you could be here, and awesome that we can be connecting across the world. Johnny Utah saying thanks to Julie for the recommendation. All right, just the last few ones before we wrap up for today. Oh, good question. Follow-up question, Anne-Marie, in reference to fusion, what about if one eye is nearsighted and the other eye is farsighted? So that probably means that one eye sees better up close and then the other eye sees better far away. And it's actually kind of common. Some people are more extreme than others, but it's pretty neat how the brain sometimes kind of adapts in that way, where it's like, oh, I got to read this text message. I'm going to primarily look at my phone through this eye. Oh, it's time to read that sign out there. I'm going to switch and kind of primarily look through the other eye. And so, yeah, any of the fusion practices are pretty much designed to harmonize the two eyes and work them closer together. Maybe using some sort of eye cover or eye patch or one eye at a time. So if you have a nearsighted eye, I would actually be working on stretching it out. So you're using objects or eye charts to actually bring it to where it's clearer. And then you're stretching it out to where it's less clear and bringing it back in. So it's kind of like, how do I stretch that focus out in a relaxed way? It's not about squinting or straining or trying. It's just about relaxing as it goes out. And then switching, I would kind of do the opposite, where it's like, okay, now I'm stretching it in. So I'm starting it where it's farther away, and I'm bringing it in to where it's less clear, and I'm sending it back to where it's better. So it's kind of like you've got, you're working each eye for its own reason. And then when you have both eyes together, you're essentially doing both as well, stretching it in, stretching it out. But yeah, I would kind of look a little bit more into the fusion section and just different ways that, we work on getting the two eyes to work together. Cheryl said it's also her first palming party. Awesome. Got some return people, got some first people. That's awesome. Okay. Awesome. Hearts of Goldenrod said, I will not use that label anymore. Sweet. In terms of lazy eye. Yeah. And in our 22-day vision tune-up this week, we were also talking about not calling an eye a bad eye or a poor eye. It's like sometimes I say that the eyes are pretty close to the mouth. They can hear what you say about them, and they're also pretty close to your brain. They are extensions of your brain, so they can also hear what you think about them. So like Susie said earlier, how you think affects how you see, and also how you speak affects how you see. So it's pretty amazing when you start to change the language and change the mentality, and how then things can kind of transform from there. So hopefully you enjoyed today's summer solstice palming party. At this point, I'm going to invite you to enjoy the rest of your day and hopefully get some sunlight and spend some time outside and take a break from your screen. And like I said, I will be tuning back in here for my next live stream on the fall equinox. So I wish you a wonderful summer. And between now and then, keep your eyes peeled for new Better Eyesight podcasts getting released on the first of each month. I'm hoping to release some new Naked Eye podcast episodes as well, maybe some new Bates Method 101 videos on YouTube. I've got another group course getting started up in August. If you feel like kind of stepping up and actually committing to 6 months of more regular classes and group meetings. And like was brought up in the chat today, the possibility of some more vision retreats as well. So the one retreat I am involved in with is not so much a Bates Method retreat. It's a color therapy retreat. It's going to be happening on November 11th. It's going to be a virtual retreat. So I'll be sharing more information about that as well. And since I am teaching in it, there is going to be a natural vision improvement component of it. But there's going to be 6 or 7 other color therapists there to do a deeper dive into color therapy and light therapy as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Stay tuned about the virtual color retreat happening November 11th and 12th. But we've got plenty of time till then, so keep your eyes peeled for anything else coming up before then. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me at the coffee shop summer solstice palming party. Have a relaxing rest of your day.